Okay, let's go to the Champ de Mars. Basically, this was just a empty field back in the 16 and 1700s. But when they built the cool militaire, they decided to turn this field into basically a training ground for the French army. Yeah, as you can see, all the tents and stuff. Yeah, I think the field could hold like 10,000 soldiers, give or take. And I guess that would have been like probably right after the cool militaire was built, so like 1765. And actually, Napoleon would have been trained out here because he went to school in 1784. So yeah, it's basically just a big green field that civilians would grow crops on. But then when they built the school, they turned it into, you know, training ground. A lot of crazy stuff has happened here over the centuries. Other than the French army being trained here. The first hydrogen-filled balloon was launched from here. That was pretty cool. And there's been a lot of festivals and celebrations here, like the first Bastille Day, first anniversary of the storming of the Bastille took place here, so everybody was partying and stuff. And then a pretty weird thing happened here, and that's what this is. This is the Festival of the Supreme Being. This was something that Robespierre decided to do. It's kind of weird. Basically, they set up all this stuff here, and I guess this was supposed to be like the Tree of Liberty and stuff like that. So, yeah, kind of weird. Kind of weird. Well, basically, instead of worshipping God and stuff, Robespierre wanted to worship reason. So, kind of made a cult of reason. Kind of odd. Let's see. Yeah, and so naturally after they turned it into a military training ground, they renamed it Champ de Mars, which comes from Campius Martius, which is what the Romans would have called the Field of Mars. So, yeah, kind of cool. Yeah, first Bastille Day, July 14th, 1790. Yeah, that doesn't sound pleasant. Shit. That was probably because of the massacre of Champ de Mars. Basically, what happened there was a huge crowd of Parisians showed up when it was announced that King Louis XVI made a deal with the politicians and was going to get to keep his throne. And so 50,000 people showed up, pissed off, and the Marquis de Lafayette actually had to get the National Guard out to break them up, and they dispersed, but then Danton brought even a bigger crowd back to Champ de Mars, and unfortunately the Marquis de Lafayette had to give the order to open fire on the crowd, so they called it a massacre. Yeah, kind of sad, but I mean, Paris was a crazy town back then. Oh, it still is a crazy town. Paris got a pretty dark history. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, a lot of cool stuff has happened here. Yeah, the Supreme Being. Yep. And this would host a lot of world expositions. Pretty cool, like 1867 and 1889, and even one right before World War II. I think it was the last one actually. It was 1937 World Expo, just showing off new technologies and stuff. And I guess this is where conscripts are brought to join the army. That's pretty cool. Or maybe they're volunteers. I'm not sure if conscription was widespread yet. Let's take a look around at the military camp. Is this where they're teaching officers how to... Actually, that looks like artillery diagrams. Yeah, teaching them trajectory and all that stuff. That's pretty cool. Anybody who thinks soldiers are stupid, they are very, very wrong. These guys had to learn a lot of stuff. And also be in really, really excellent shape. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of military training going on at the Champ de Mars nowadays, unfortunately, but it's a nice park, and yeah, people just bring their dogs and bring a good book to read and sit on the benches and relax. Probably the only action going on here is when they have some martial arts people showing up to do some training and stuff. Like, I think the big French martial art is savate, I believe. It's kind of like a French kickboxing style. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it looks like some kind of stable or something. Okay, so I think in about 90 years, this is about the spot where the Eiffel Tower is going to be built. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Look at them, boys. Shit. Yeah, you picked the wrong place to cause trouble, bud. So yeah, I guess in about 90 years, the Eiffel Tower will be built right here. Okay, 1944. Guess this is the Champ de Mars. Looks a little different nowadays. Alright, let's go take a look. Well, there she is. La Tour Eiffel. Well, I guess I'll go into the details about the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower was built for the 1889 World's Fair or World's Exposition. It was designed by two men working for Gustave Eiffel. Their names were Maurice Coquelin and Emile Noguera, and they basically designed the Eiffel Tower with help from Stephen Silvestri and Gustave Eiffel. Gustave Eiffel and Stephen Silvestri added mostly just decorative things like to the design and stuff. But they all knew that the only way their design was going to be chosen for the World's Exposition was if Gustave Eiffel put his name on it. So that's why he made it the Eiffel Tower, was because his name was so famous. I mean, Gustave Eiffel was just a brilliant engineer and designer. He had worked on many projects before this, like the Garabit Viaduct, and he even worked on the Statue of Liberty, designing the inner metal framework that they would build the bronze around and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, this guy was just brilliant. And naturally, he was a master of working with iron and you know, constructing things with a iron framework and lattice. I mean, if you look at the bridges that he built and the work he did on the Statue of Liberty, you can kind of see where the Eiffel Tower would definitely make sense with his previous work. And so with their bold design and Eiffel's name on the project, they were pretty certain that their design was going to be picked for the 1889 World's Fair. And using his connections and the government and so forth, Eiffel got the project picked, and the French government compensated his company a little bit, but the French government was not going to pay for the whole project. So yeah, Eiffel's company had to kind of bear most of the brunt of the cost, and I think it cost about 6.5 million francs at the time, so pretty expensive for the time. And another sort of difficult moment in the beginning was that the artistic community of Paris, you know, and all the bourgeoisie people weren't too big on the design. They thought it was, you know, pretty ugly and did not fit with their ideas of what Paris should look like. And I guess I can kind of understand from, you know, their standpoint, but I think the Eiffel Tower is the epitome of the era in which it was designed and built during. It was made out of wrought iron, which thanks to the Industrial Revolution was a lot easier to make now. And, you know, it just totally fits with that Industrial Revolution time. And it's just a very bold and unique design. And I really think it stands the test of time as really a great monument to the French people, especially at this time, because the French people were kind of having a hard time. They had just lost the Franco-Prussian War about 15 years earlier, and they were still reeling from that. I mean, that was just such an embarrassing defeat for them and a masterpiece for the Germans. The German Empire was born because of that war, and also France lost 2 provinces, Alsace and Lorraine. So the French were kind of down on their luck, but this was also kind of the golden era for France. They had great artists. They had huge developments in science and technology going on. I mean, this really was a golden age, and other than the Franco-Prussian War, there really hadn't been another war that century since the Napoleonic Wars and the Crimean War. So things were going pretty well in France, and they definitely wanted to show off their industrial and engineering skills, and also, hey, give the world something nice to look at. So I think the Eiffel Tower definitely fits that perfectly. All right, let's go and take a look at it, shall we?
Before, you can't linger. Unfinished memories are way too
Panzer
dangerous. You
Compact
need to
and
find a
Zwei?
way out.
I think so.
I'll guide you as best I can.
Yeah, basically this is the Nazi occupation of Paris. It's a timeline I'm in. Kind of weird, but yeah. Just roll with it. Hey, here's the foundation of the Eiffel Tower. It's kind of crazy how they built this. They basically had to build these right into the ground and anchor the legs in. And it was kind of crazy too, because in order for the legs to reach the, see that, the first floor right there? In order for them to all connect to that first floor, they actually had to put hydraulic lifts under each leg to move it, you know, inches or even maybe a meter until they were evenly dispersed along the first floor. So kind of crazy. Imagine a freaking hydraulic lift picking up each leg of this. Like, holy shit. But yeah, you can really see the wrought iron lattice work here. I mean, imagine how complicated this had to be. I mean, my god. But each piece of the Eiffel Tower was prefabricated, so yeah, basically they would get the iron pieces to the site and this is going to be an interesting tour. Hey, there's Les Invalides. There's the cool militaire. It looks a lot cooler with light bulbs. But yeah, every single piece of this was prefabricated and brought to the site, and then the workers would just rivet and I guess weld it together. Okay, this doesn't look dangerous at all. Jeez. Another, I think probably the great... Fuck off, Ralph. I think the biggest sign of just how great a designer and man Gustave Eiffel was, I think only one guy got killed during the construction of this, which is pretty amazing. Oh yeah, and they got restaurants on the Eiffel Tower. I think they have 2 nowadays. Definitely gotta check those out when I go to the Eiffel Tower. But yeah, Gustave Eiffel, man, he ran a tight ship and really had elite engineers and metal workers, and just everybody working on this project was just amazing. He only had like 300 workers tops working on this project at a time. Yeah, there's the Palais Chalet. That's where that famous picture of Hitler was taken, was over there. So yeah, I mean, this really was an amazing project, and it only took them 2 years to finish. I think they finished, oh yeah, those are the elevators. Basically, when the Nazis were taking Paris, the French partisans climbed the Eiffel Tower and cut the elevator cables to deprive the Nazis of use of the elevators. So yeah, that was kind of a fuck you to the Nazis. But unfortunately, the Nazis were able to climb the Eiffel Tower and put a what was it, Reichskrieg flag on top of the Eiffel Tower with a nice big swastika on it. But when the Americans and the Allies took Paris back, the French citizens climbed up the Eiffel Tower and threw the swastika flag off and put the tricolor up there. So that was a pretty cool moment in history, the retaking of Paris. But yeah, the Eiffel Tower was completed, I think, on the Ides of March 1889, like a month or 2 before the World's Exposition. Okay. Fuck you. I'm giving a tour here. As your school militaire. As a value. Okay. I think I'm ooh, machining a bear for your tricycle. Take that yeah, I don't know if wrought iron will stop the bullets. Better than nothing, I guess. Come on, come on. Alright, so yeah, they've got the Eiffel Tower built right in time for the World Exposition, and the World Exposition of 1889 would have been just freaking amazing to go to. I mean, you had Edison showing off stuff. Oh, in case you don't know what a World's Fair is, basically countries from around the world show up and show off their stuff, basically. You know, their technology, and a bunch of companies show up to try and sell stuff. You know.
There it is. Your way out. Hurry.
I think that giant V stands for the Vichy government, which was the puppet French government under the Nazis' control. I'm assuming that's what the V stands for. But yeah, like 60,000 companies or scientists and people showed up at the World's Fair trying to sell their technology and designs and stuff. So it's a pretty big deal, and I think like 35 countries showed up, and millions and millions and millions of people showed up. So, you know, the Eiffel Tower was kind of a hit right then and there. Well, I mean, it was the tallest building in the world at the time for like 40 years until the Chrysler Building was built. And then, of course, the Empire State Building took over the title. But, yeah, and the Eiffel Tower, oddly enough, was only supposed to be around for 20 years, but, you know, they kept trying to keep it around, trying to come up with uses for it. Like, they tried using it for experiments like radio antenna stuff. Like, I think they were actually able to measure the distance from Paris and New York City using radio waves from it. A bunch of guys tested parachutes by jumping off of it. Fortunately, that didn't go too well. Yeah. And, you know, they just kept trying to keep it around, and then eventually it just became an iconic structure, and so people kept it. And the cool thing too was when it was finally finished, Gustave Eiffel climbed to the top and hoisted the tricolor at the top, so that was kind of cool. Seems like a pretty cool tradition of people putting flags on top of the Eiffel Tower. Well, I think that just shows how iconic it is. And yeah, oddly enough though, when the Nazis were pulling out of Paris in 44, Hitler, being a crazy fucking asshole, ordered the general commanding the Nazis in Paris to basically blow up the Eiffel Tower and also the museums and stuff. Thankfully, he refused to do so, mainly because, you know, he was like, what the hell is the military strategic point of doing that? It would just piss the Allies off. And he was also a big fan of French art and culture. I mean, come on. And, you know, it just would not have been the right thing to do. And he was, I think, also convinced that Hitler was pretty fucking nuts. So, yeah, the guy, the German commander, I can't remember his name. It was whatever. But basically, he was called the savior of Paris because he refused to follow Hitler's command to blow up the famous buildings of Paris. So, yeah. Of course, when Hitler took Paris in 1940, he didn't destroy it because he was an artist, and you know. But yeah, I think he was pretty unhinged by the end there. Thankfully for us, because he was having his forces do stupid stuff. Yeah, I mean, the Eiffel Tower is just such an iconic structure. I mean, it's lit up every New Year's, and I mean, you can't look at the French skyline without thinking of the Eiffel Tower. I mean, it really is just an incredible, magnificent structure, and definitely symbolizes the ingenuity, the brilliance, and the uniqueness of France.